Hi everyone, I would like to welcome you to my class, and in our today's class we shall look at the impacts of trauma in early childhood. First and foremost, I want us to give the meaning of trauma. Trauma is a psychological emotional response to a negative event or experience that is deeply distressing or disturbing or even upsetting. What are the causes or the types of trauma that we have? So in the following section will take us through the types of trauma, the causes of trauma, and how to deal with traumatic situations. So I want us to begin by looking at the types of trauma. The types of trauma includes the following. 1. Single incident acute trauma. This is when a child has experienced one incident. For example, if it is rape, it's only rape, and if it is physical neglect, it's only physical neglect. The other type of trauma is called complex trauma. As the name suggests, complex trauma refers to exposure to more than one traumatic event. For instance, if a child experiences a road accident, domestic violence, and a natural disaster, that is what we say a child has complex traumatic events. The other types of trauma is historical, collective, or intergenerational trauma. This kind of trauma is characterized by emotional difficulties which affect different generations, cultural groups, and different communities. They experience this kind of trauma because of being discriminated by others. Examples of this include slavery, racism, minority groups in a society, and during the time of war. Other types of trauma include vicarious or secondary trauma. This type of trauma is experienced by someone who listens to someone who has encountered trauma or witnessed a trauma firsthand. The one listening can experience secondary trauma and even exhibit the symptoms of the victim. For example, if a child listens to a friend who has experienced home violence, may experience secondary trauma. The other type of trauma is called chronic trauma. And as the name suggests, this is as a result of repeated and prolonged experience, for example, domestic abuse or sexual abuse. And lastly, we have what we call early childhood trauma. What is early childhood trauma? It refers to the negative experiences or events that are extremely frightening, overwhelming, or dangerous to a child between 0 to 6 years. Now, I want us now to look at the causes of trauma in early childhood. What causes trauma in early childhood? I have identified quite a number of causes of trauma, and I want us to begin with the physical neglect. Physical neglect is when a parent or a caregiver fails to provide a child with basic needs like food, shelter, medication, and clothing. The child is likely to get traumatized since the child has no one else to provide for him or her. The other cause is the death of a loved one. The loss of a parent or a caregiver is, of course, the darkest episode of life of any child. This is an event that a child cannot forget even when they are not old enough. to understand what death is all about. The other cause is being a victim or witnessing an act of violence. In our society today, that we live today, there is a lot of home violence. They experience situations where fathers murder their families due to drugs or maybe as a result of poverty, and at the end of the day, it is the child who actually gets affected by the violence. The other cause is severe illness or injury. Children are always vulnerable to diseases and injuries since they are not in a position to protect themselves from diseases and even from other dangers. We have heard of children who fall down from trees and they break their legs or even get injured on their heads and other parts of the body, alongside other illnesses like asthma, HIV, or cancer, especially leukemia. These are severe illnesses or injuries that causes trauma in our children. The other cause is being involved in a road accident. When one gets involved in a serious vehicle accident, may actually get severe injuries and even get heart attacks. Some may even die. But for children who survive from these events, may get traumatized since they were there and witnessed all the happenings during the incident. Other causes of trauma includes physical abuse, and this may occur when anyone who has the responsibility to take care of a child injures the child physically. Another cause is emotional abuse. This is where a person abuses a child emotionally. If a person tells the child or abuses the child emotionally, that becomes a very traumatizing event. When a person injures our dignity or emotional integrity, that person is definitely abusing us. An emotional abuse in this case includes threats, shaming the person, or people driving you to hurt yourself. Another cause is sexual assault. This is the most damaging form of abuse and the most terrifying thing, that is the most common cause of childhood trauma. It doesn't have only to be physical effect on the child, but also psychological effect. Children who have been assaulted sexually may develop fear of people of the opposite sex and may never relate well with them. Other causes include natural disasters, sometimes when we are not in a position to control the nature, and many of times we end up being hurt by that which we cannot control. Things like earthquakes, wildfires, tsunamis, drought, windstorms, tornadoes, floods, drought. These events causes trauma to our young ones. Other causes include witnessing terror attacks or robbery and bullying that normally takes place in our schools. Now, at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I want us to look at the effects of trauma. Having witnessed or looked at the causes of trauma, let's now look at the effects of trauma. What are the effects of trauma in our young children? 1, it causes brain pain, and one may develop mood swings and depression. It may lead to loss of appetite and loss of weight. It tampers with the child brain development. The child may feel insecure, afraid, and bitter with themselves. They may feel bad about themselves and start blaming themselves for what has happened. A traumatized child may never have friends in life and may always stay alone most of the time. Trauma generates negative emotions about oneself. Children develop distressing emotions like anger, sadness, shame, and fear. Children always feel bad about themselves, claim themselves, and wish that they would reverse the incident. And this may make them cry most of the time, and this may even lead to depression. They may even develop trust issues since they doubt everyone around them. The traumatized children may have very low self-esteem, and this may lead to having suicidal thoughts or even committing suicide because they cannot control their anger inside. Traumatized children may even blame their parents for not protecting them from events in which a parent doesn't have control. How do you deal with trauma? Now allow me to go through ways of dealing with trauma. Avoid the company of toxic people. Children should be taught self-regulation and stress reduction techniques. They should seek out support or help from friends and the family. Children should get enough sleep. They should also take healthy balanced food or balanced diet. The children should also allow themselves to get close to other people. Let children get to the point of realization that they are safe. You may also refer a child to a trauma specialist. Make a child stop and reflect on how he or she has been surviving since when the traumatic event took place. One should be very honest with oneself. And finally, let the child realize that anger, aggression, and vengeance spirit that has been holding them back from reconciling with the past isn't doing them any good, and let it go. That actually marks the end of our class today, where we've been looking at trauma in early childhood. Thank you.